that is being used there, but we don't have the people that really understand it on the parole board. And so for those reasons, because of these very serious and obvious disparate impact, thank you, on people who are Black and Latino, it's so important that we take a look at that. In addition to all the other very important and humanitarian reasons that have been discussed, which involve people who are themselves addicted, mentally ill, which make up the vast majority of the prison population. I think that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thanks. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mallory Handra, FJH.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Use the mic, please.
My name is Mallory Nor. I'm the Executive Director of Families for Justice as Healing. We're a community-based organization that is home. Our home is in Roxbury, and we serve families across the Commonwealth. And our mission is to end the incarceration of women and girls, and we also support people who are impacted by the criminal punishment system, which means that we have supported families whose loved ones are eligible for parole and prisoners themselves who are preparing for parole hearings. So we wanted to, on behalf of our members and the families that we love and support, wanted to join the chorus of people calling for a person to be appointed to the parole board with a background in human services. So I think we've seen a struggle in the room between interpersonal concerns and institutional concerns. And so I want to be clear that my concerns are institutional. We have a terrifyingly and crisis level low rates of parole when it's intended to be a meaningful path to release in the Commonwealth, and we know that's not happening. And so I think in order to have something different happen, we need to consider nominees with different expertise. So in that way, we want to oppose the nomination of Attorney McCarthy in favor of, as many of colleagues have said in the room, nominees with a different set of expertise. That would include psychologists, psychiatrists, experts and professionals with backgrounds in addiction, trauma, and mental illness, which other people have said, and we support and echo that. Someone said it jokingly, but we want to amplify the call for a person on the parole board who has experienced parole themselves. And
wasn't a joke.
Great, and we're serious. And also, just so you know, there are parolees who also have now education, background, certification, and expertise in addiction, mental health, and trauma who have gone on to have professional careers after they've been incarcerated, and we would welcome them to be members of the board. Certainly nobody knows better than formerly incarcerated people exactly what it takes to come home from prison, heal, and advance their lives. And we believe that formerly incarcerated people need to have a meaningful role in shaping every part of the criminal justice system because they've been the most impacted by it. We are also aware, as many board members themselves have said, council members rather, of the immense power parole board members have to decide the fate of prisoners and the people who love them. And we're concerned that the parole board hearings that our families have been a part of have been much more like re-prosecutions rather than an assessment of somebody's commitment to their own development and learning while they're in prison. We also think that parole board members need to acknowledge the immense barriers that are on prisoners themselves caused by the trauma of their current incarceration, how difficult it is to learn and grow in an environment that's as violent and stifling as prison is, and that we hope parole board members will be equipped to acknowledge that. We believe that the parole board does not currently parole enough prisoners, which threatens our public safety rather than protects it. For too long, our parole board has functioned out of fear of the worst case scenario rather than what's best for families and communities. The parole board allowed a single incident, or the governor, and then the parole board following the firing of those parole board members and appointment of new members, allowed a single incident of violence to condemn hundreds of prisoners in Massachusetts to suffer for years longer than they should have in prison. There's an urgent need to increase parole rates so people have the opportunity to come home and be productive before they and their families are hurt and broken by excessively long sentences. Parole, again, is intended to be a meaningful opportunity for release. Appointing another lifetime prosecutor would only cement the current culture of reconvicting prisoners who have already served a substantial amount of time. So we want to implore you to find to appoint and fill openings with social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and parolees themselves. That's the final comment I wanted to make was just the political context that we're also sort of speaking in. And while much has been done to reform criminal justice in Massachusetts, we continue to see, in particular in Hampden County, the only data that's available to us publicly is from 2011 to 2014 from the Council of State Governments, which showed a wild increase in the number of women being incarcerated in the county, in particular for drug possession. So we also have some concerns of considering law enforcement from Hampden County, given some negative incarceration trends coming out of that county.
Well, as a resident of Hampden County, I can tell you that the district and superior courts of Hampden County are the busiest courts in town. And that the amount of drugs that come through there, and are sold there, and are consumed there is alarming in and of itself. And in addition to that, I get to speak, stop. In addition to that, with the drugs come the guns, and it is problematic that the number of people in Hampden County who have drug problems and situations, and I speak from experiences 19 and a half years on the bench, in terms of the number of people who come through there, women who come through there, and it's not first-time offenders that you're talking about. It's people who have a history of drug use, possession, in some instances sales, but also shoplifting, breaking into cars, prostitution, and a myriad of
Well,
things.
we'd love publicly accessible data about prosecution and convictions out of Hampden County on a yearly basis. That would be great. And also, we'd love to embrace alternative sentencing and approaches to people who are struggling with the illness of addiction. As we've seen, criminalizing addiction and poverty is not working. It's not working. It's causing pain and suffering in the Commonwealth.
All right, Counselor.
I just wanted to, I see your shirt and you for the Council for Incarcerated. I wanted to know for your own history, if you don't know, because you're young. But in my 20 years, probably the best chair of the parole board was Mike Parole. And he knew that these inmates were going to be released in society. And he mandated that they take courses to get their GED, anger management, I'm trying to remember all of them, marriage counseling, so many courses, and there was only 3% that came back. And he was so kind. He had done so much. He even got an award from the Animal Rescue League when he was an attorney, because he would go to court to fight against animal abuse. So this man, and he's a judge now, and we are very blessed to have him. But what he did as a parole board chair, I mean, he was a role model. Somehow we went a ride from there, but he did all of that, and I want you to know that's his name.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to have people on the parole board that recognize the limitations of each jail and prison where people are incarcerated, right? And that prisoners have really different access to educational programming or programming to advance their lives, or they're required to do it over and over again because there's no variety or resources for them. Or as in the case of the person who's parole board hearing I just went to, he had to pay for his own classes. So I think a balance between understanding, again, the limitations of what prisoners have to advance their lives and really giving them the opportunity to come home.
His mission was to be able to let these inmates go back into society successfully and be able to, and he was, and he has the best record. Just remember that name.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, I wasn't joking about having an inmate on the parole board. In fact, think about it. Is there anybody better?
No, there's not, and I can get you a list of 50 names, like whenever you want it. I'm not joking either. There are people in this room that are qualified to be on the board. So if we can work together on that, if we can know about the appointment process, we've got the names. Some of them are in this room. They were humble enough to not say I should be on the board, but I promise you they're in here. Or they will
Petition
speak
the
in a few
governor.
minutes.
Well,
Petition
when
the governor.
when you think about it, they are fellows for the most part, and whatever women may that have been through the system, they know when somebody is, let's call it bullshit against, they've been there. And if they get out and they turn their life around, they become a sociologist, or a psychologist, or something, I could see having 7 people from inside on the board.
We
First of all,
know
they're
that.
going to release the people they know that aren't going to commit a crime probably. They're going to be better attuned to that, having done it themselves. But we're so afraid to do that.
Yep, and in my nervousness, I'd be remiss to say that I hope also that you as council members will be asking potential candidates directly about their intention to review clemency and commutation applications, as well as applications to end lifetime parole, because I think hearing about people's priorities and intentions as parole board members would also be really important in
I've been
considering
lobbying
that.
for years, okay?
Excuse
You
me.
people have to. You people.
Also, just as a community organizer, I'm really confused by the direction from the board, which is that I don't want to read your letters because I won't believe them, or I want you to be more involved. So we're hearing a lot of mixed messages. There's folks here that work full time.
Here, come here, so we can
Yeah.
see you.
So the attorney couldn't because there's a crisis of not enough public defenders in Hampden County. And a lot of our members came and waited for you for an hour and a half, and they had to get back to their paid jobs and couldn't wait here on their lunch break. So we are here for you in as much as we can possibly, but this is definitely not a welcoming or accessible environment for working people from our communities. So please listen to our phone calls and letters, because that's a meaningful way to contribute for those working folks that cannot be here. Thank you.
My name West. I can't read the first name.
about that.
I'm gonna guess Catherine, but I could be totally wrong. Is there somebody named West here?
Gate,
Hey, Kate left.
Gate is gone.
Okay.
Gate West.
He had another. All right, Milton Jones.
That would be me. I don't know if I should say good evening or good afternoon. So hi.
Lord.
Hi. Yeah, good Lord. Again, my name is Milton Jones. I work for the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. We are an organization that provides services to families of homicide victims, as well as families of those who are lost to incarceration. I have a background in all of the criminal justice system, to include incarceration, to include wrongful arrests, wrongful conviction. And one of the things that I learned through this process is that when the cards are stacked, when police rush to judgment around a crime, somebody in here, I'm sure, is familiar with the Child Stewart case. Very, very high-profile case, horrendous. The police went into the housing project and found themselves a black man, because the description was a black man. Simple as that. And they went and got one. Had Child Stewart's brother not came forward, that man would have been convicted, no doubt. So prosecutors are in the business of prosecuting and are in the business of sending people to jail. And when that is your passion, if you will, that is your very job, to find the wrong in an individual. This is your focus. This is what you're looking for. You are predisposed to find it. So prosecutors are not always, and most times, are not looking for and seeking out the truth. They are looking for and seeking out a conviction. And all tricks are played in this process to make this work, to make this a conviction, to stack the cards, to do things in the courtroom that are just not appropriate to get a conviction. This is not about this, who I'm sure is a fine lady, truly. Her credentials are before us. She does her job, whatever that means. I hope she wasn't one that, but no, that's a different story. And she wasn't. But she does her job. And this is about timing right now. And it's about balance. Maybe some other time, 10 years ago, perhaps, 20 years ago, perhaps, no problem. Put her on. Not now. This is not the time right now. It's not about her. It could be anybody here with a prosecutorial background. It's not the time for that now. We have 5 of you, 4 of you. You'll be the 5th one. We don't need any more of her. We don't need any more prosecutors, and it's been said here all day long, on the parole board. You know, I enjoy sports, and when I'm picking a team, I want different talent on the team to make the team run well and make the team good. You need different talent. You don't want all gods on a basketball team. You need a center, you need a couple of forwards, you need a couple of guards. But we have all gods on the parole board. Everybody wants to run the ball through the paint and run the ball into the middle and control the ball. I can imagine what the executive sessions are like with the parole board, and everybody's a prosecutor. Everybody wants to punish everybody. Let me give you a case in point that speaks to a concept that perhaps I haven't heard it here today, but perhaps it needs to be heard. Over-incarceration. Listen, that is so damaging to our communities. Sinelli should have been released. Thank you. I'll take 2, please. Sinelli should have been released 10 years prior. They waited and they denied him over and over and over. Now he's fried, and they say, okay, we're gonna let you go. Really? He's done. He can't do anything except what he did when he got out, because you fried him. Too late. Should have let him out 10 years. Over-incarceration. I spoke on behalf of an individual who now is incarcerated for 42 years on a 2nd-degree life sentence, albeit he killed a baby. Nonetheless, he did that under the influence of hallucinogenics. They did not address the hallucinogenic problem. They addressed the crime. Well, the crime was a product of the hallucinogenic. How can you not address that? And you kept him in prison for 42 years. He's still there. They're going to let him out. Oh, imagine that. So when I spoke to this, I told the parole board, I said, look, this is a unique case. This is not a case that speaks to recidivism. He's not a serial killer. He doesn't have a record. This is an isolated incident that happened while he was tripping, as they call it. He's not going to get out and pick up a life of crime and recidivate. It's not that kind of case. You see what I'm saying? Time. I understand. I have more to say.
I'm sure you do, and I you get great reasons why. And if I had time for a coffee, I'd love to sit and talk. But right now, I got 7 other people
I know. Thank you.
also.
Where you from?
Yeah, awesome.
And appreciate listening to you.
Thank you.
And I do agree with you that look at our country as opposed to just about any other.
Way too long.
Most countries, 25 years. By then, the kick is all out of here. incarcerate too much, and we kind of create criminals. Too quick to say. That most countries, states in our country, down south, are not incarcerating people. Georgia, no states are thought of as friendly to and people in crimes. They have realized, maybe for the wrong reason, but they've realized it's very expensive to keep people in, and crime rates don't go down. Just make pressure. And then when you boot them out after 40 years, what do you expect? So I appreciate listening to you.
I was gonna say, where do I put my application in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say that last year I met, a couple of us went over to Roxbury and I met with their forum and I met with some former inmates and they happen to be African American and I learned a lot about how trying to get a job, trying to get housing. But we don't have too much time. I don't want to get onto that. I agreed with everything you said except Sinelli. Sinelli was a 3-lifer and he was given a plumbing internship to live with his uncle and pay rent, and to see his probation officer once a week. After he killed Officer McGuire, I called and I found out none of that was done. He didn't do any of it. So let that alone. Do you remember Salvati? 32 years in prison, and he was set up by the FBI. Who do we trust? And you know what? There was 15 FBI men at his trial standing out in the courthouse with machine guns. So it's just not blacks. This was Italian. This was trying to say mafia and crime. And it was 15 of them with machine guns. Don't you think that influenced the jurors? So I don't know.
It's not just black, but by percentage.
Yeah, so the
We
whole
know the
system,
story.
the whole system. But thank you. I really appreciate it. I listened to you and I thank you for coming.
Just one point, just Marilyn, I cheered that when Joseph Salvati.
I remember that you did. Yeah, I wasn't on there.
What an injustice.
Yeah.
What an injustice.
32
I
years.
voted to continue this.
And the other 2 died in prison that they accused.
Councilor Kennedy.
I just want to say, I agree with Councilor Devaney. I agree with what you said. I don't agree with what you said about Sinelli. Sinelli had multiple chances. He was paroled multiple times. Went back in. What he did was despicable. And very frankly, he's the cause of a lot of the problems with the parole board today and the low parole rates because of what he did. So I agree with most of what you said. I cannot agree with your defense of Sinelli at all.
Well, no, that wasn't in defense of Sinelli.
It was a little.
I just thought that he was over incarcerated.
He
And
may
then
have
they
been
let him out and he
incarcerated,
was
but
already
that cannot excuse.
beyond.
that
I
cannot
may be
excuse-
wrong, I'm not perfect.
That cannot excuse his behavior and his
No, it doesn't
multiple-
excuse anything, of course not.
his multiple infractions that led to the death of a very decent man. And and I knew his brother well. He was a probation officer in Woburn. And you know, as I said, he's caused a lot of the reasons the people in this room is because of his behavior that caused him plummeting in parole.
I understand that, and I appreciate what you're saying. Although I believe that any one person's incident shouldn't be the cause for everyone to pay for.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
No, I agree with you on that,
Yeah.
but
So
I can't sit here and in any way, shape, or form suggest that what Sinelli did was in any way excusable. It's not.
And I went to that.
I don't believe I said it was excusable what he did. I never said that. I would never say that. Of course, I said he got out. I thought he was in so long that by the time he got out, he was a mess. He still did what he did.
But following up
That's on him.
Counselor, I went to Officer McGuire's funeral, and it was heartbreaking. He should have gone home to his wife and children.
You sure
But
should.
let me tell you, following up on what council said, because of what Sinelli did, Governor Patrick, he overreacted and threw them all out. And
That
so
was
there were
wrong.
people that were supposed to be out that December, because remember, that murder was the day after Christmas. They couldn't get out because there was only, as I said, you have to have more than 2 people for a lifer. And it was so egregious the way he did that.
I'm mad
It
at
did
him too.
affect the parole board, absolutely. So I'm sorry, that's
I
one
said
thing
I'm mad at him too. I'm not
So that's
saying-
the only thing I
That's
disagree
on
with.
him.
I think we get really far afield.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get
On a
it far afield.
philosophical discussion
Thank you.
doesn't have anything to do with the price of peas.
Thank you. Right.
But thank you.
However, it is now 20 after 4. I have 6 other people. Well, the other thing is, counselors, we're not done with the hearing. We've got to come back next week anyway, because the nominee.
But if the people are here to talk, they should be allowed to speak.
I think but we still have to come back next week.
All right, but
Hold on. Why? You say, I only have a question, and it's like 20 minutes later, we get off on a tangent.
you only got 4 counselors here.
Excuse me, I'm running this meeting, okay? I'm gonna keep calling people, and at 5 o'clock, if we're not done, we're not done. If you wanna submit something in writing, that's great, but we're coming back next week, because she has not had an opportunity. She's been sitting here all day. All right, so that's my rule. In any event, Betsy Chase.
On left. Oh, that's good.
Betsy Chase. Okay. David Harris Arms.
So I want to begin by saying it's a little bit awkward to me to have been sitting here all day and hear this part for the third person. So I just want to say hello to you directly and acknowledge that you're here and in this room and hearing. So I also want to echo something that Patty Guerin said earlier, that this is about the construction of the parole board and not necessarily speaking against. So I'll go on that side of the ledger. My name is David Harris, and I'm Managing Director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Law and Justice at Harvard Law School. The Houston Institute continues the legacy of one of the 20th century's preeminent attorneys. Work is focused on ensuring the full benefits of membership and participation in society to those who have been or are being excluded from those benefits. Our work involves reform to the legal system, including parole, but it draws from what's known as the social determinants of health to understand and address forces at work in our society, preventing us from living up to the ideals contained in our founding documents. Although we're housed in a law school, I'm not a lawyer by training. Indeed, Chair Hurley, I'm a social scientist, a sociologist by training, and I offer the perspective of thinking about the composition of the board. In many respects, my position as a social scientist in the sea of attorneys, law school gives me a particular insight. Many years ago, as a young graduate student studying sociology and feeling unhappy and uncertain, I toyed with the idea of shifting to law school. I was interested in law at the sea and was fortunate enough to get an appointment with a prominent faculty. After greeting me most cordially, he asked me what I was doing at the time. I said I was a student of sociology. He lost control and started yelling. I mean, it felt like yelling. That's what's wrong with the law. Now, all you social scientists are coming here and destroying it. I think a tension remains between law and social science. It's a tension that Houston tried to mitigate with Kenneth and Mamie Clark's groundbreaking doll experiments in which young black children attributed positive characteristics to white dolls, but not to those that looked like them. This evidence showed us no data or statistics could the harm done to black students by educational segregation. Houston and Clark combined social science and the law as a means of achieving justice, but also demonstrated how important social science is to understanding that legal structures such as segregation and I would say punishment create negative outcomes. In order to meet the mandate of parole, we need to welcome and incorporate non-legal, non-law enforcement voices and perspectives into this decision-making process. Those voices are crucial to meeting the imperatives set by last year's justice reform legislation signed by Governor Baker. In passing this legislation, we became part of national recognition that sometimes something is amiss in our legal system. We hear a lot lately about the shift to public health framework in dealing with the problems we face. If parole eligibility is still largely framed based on the adequacy of punishment and individual risk, not needs, healing, growth, wellness, and rehabilitation. We must act affirmatively to create a system of parole that complements rather than impedes larger scale. We study race and justice at the Houston Institute, and I have to kind of get to this racial disparity. The parole board must understand and unpack several of these to carry out its mission. People of color are policed more heavily, arrested and prosecuted at higher rates, even for minor crimes, disparately charged with offenses carrying mandatory minimums, jailed in trial at starkly disparate rates, and subject to higher median bail amounts. Data compiled by the Massachusetts Sentencing Commission in 2016 found people of color overrepresented at each increasing metric of punishment as well, measured by rates of conviction, indictments in superior court, rates of incarceration-based sentences, and rates of sentences to prison instead of jail. Reports by the Council of State Governments Justice Center in 2016 confirmed these data, finding a larger proportion of Black and Hispanic people received convictions than white people, and a larger portion of Black and Hispanic people were sentenced to incarceration than white people. Despite our state's low incarceration rates compared to sister states, Massachusetts has the nation's gravest sentencing disparities between Hispanics and whites, and ranks among the worst in Black-white sentencing disparities. Mandatory minimums are significant drivers of these racial disparities. For example, Black and Latinx residents make up 22% of the population ages 17 and over, but 33% of all convicted offenders. 43% of people convicted of drug offenses, and 74% of people convicted of mandatory minimum. I submit written testimony here that will kind of confirm this. These data underlie the use of things like risk assessment, which we heard earlier referred to as actuarial tables, but she was talking about risk assessment that rely on aggregate data to make decisions about individuals. These assessments include questions about prior involvement in the legal system, characteristics of the neighborhood, educational achievement, family background. All of these, quote, risk factors are associated with a system of inequality that channels disproportionate numbers of people of color into the system, creating a closed loop in which one's background foretells the future regardless of their personal history growth. I have 45 seconds. Controlled work cannot dismantle this system, I understand. The addition of new voices and perspectives, however, could well help the board recognize how biases and systems of inequality affect those who come before it and consider those effects in its deliberation. Thank you, sir. This is not a competition, so I'm going to say, I appreciate the very productive meeting. I do want to make one editorial comment. We were told earlier that we should turn out, and I have to say, that those of us who stayed here all of this time, it's a little disconcerting to talk to the floor. So
let me just say this, okay? This hearing had to be held today because there's a 30-day requirement. I didn't ask that other hearing be put on first. It's the counselor's right to do that. If we had started on time, all of this would be moved and the hearing would be over. As it stands, I've still got 4 people to call. I'm going to call all 4 because I don't think it's fair to pass it back when you've been sitting here all day. Okay? But there will be another part to this hearing that is going to be continued, right, for next week. And that's a part of the process.
Can I just say something about talking before? I don't think any of us plan on being here all day. I don't think any of us planned on being here this late. And I know that I know that Councilor Casey had some childcare issues. That's why she had to leave. I know that Councilor Duff had something. I think it was a medical appointment. Something. I don't know if you saw she had an injury. That's why she had to leave. Not anticipating this. I'm in trouble with my wife because I made an appointment with my plumber who showed up at 4 o'clock to fix a problem I have at my house, and I'm not there. So things happen that are unanticipated. It's not that I can tell you right now that everybody in this council works, whether we agree or disagree on issues. We work very, very hard, and I appreciate what you said. But most the attendance rate of people on this council is almost 100% at every hearing and every vote. For every single one of us. I just want to point out, because you made a comment, and I just want to point that out. It's a very dedicated body, every single one of us. There are various reasons why people have no choice but to leave. Okay? That's not to say that they're not interested. They heard a lot of testimony, and they'll be here for the rest of this hearing. I can guarantee you that when the nominee has an opportunity to speak and an opportunity to ask her questions.
I think we've all given up. Everybody has, and I agree with that, and I appreciate that. But you know, you said it was disconcerting.
There was a comment made about people showing up.
No,
What I'm saying is that
absolutely, but this is what's going on here is unusual. It's not the norm. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you all very much.
The reason was we had a hearing first at 9. It's impossible to have a hearing in 2 hours. We only should have 1 hearing a week. That's the problem.
That's for you.
That's this problem, not yours.
Okay, Christine McCarthy. Lanny Kudapa. Not here. I'm telling you, you have 5 minutes.
He yielded to her.
Okay, giving it back to you. 5 minutes. I told you, I'm gonna listen to everybody. And then we've got to adjourn because there's not.
Okay. Well, I had a very eloquent testimony, but I described it. I'm another social scientist. I'm a criminologist, sociologist, research sociologist, and I was the executive director of Partakers, which is an organization that worked in concert with Boston University's prison education program. I as well taught inside the walls for many years, inside 6 different state facilities. I think that if I were, and this is not a self-nomination, by the way, if I were on the parole board, I would be coming with such a different mentality than I perceived law enforcement folks coming to the parole board with. I know the kinds of questions I would ask, and I have been to enough parole hearings to know that those are the kinds of questions that are not asked. Basically, that's everything that people have said previous to me about the balance, the necessary diversity, the lack thereof, is imperative that you guys take very seriously.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Frida. Plummer? Yes.
Try to be short. I'm not used to public speaking. I'm a retired person who volunteered in a prison and volunteered in a basic literacy and math program. And there I met an inmate who was very excited about his parole hearing, and it turned out into a very disappointing outcome. And I think that outcome happened because there weren't mental health, social service people on the parole board who could understand his state of mind. So this inmate was born in Puerto Rico, and he had really poor English skills. And he was told that there would be an interpreter at the parole hearing. But when he arrived, he learned that there was no interpreter available. And instead of rescheduling, they said I wasn't there. He said that he was going to go ahead and needs to do his best. As a result, the man had trouble understanding and keeping up with the proceedings. He had trouble answering questions clearly and fluently and being understood by the parole board. I surmise he became very frustrated and agitated, and as a result, he was denied parole on the basis of being problems with anger management. So I am the daughter of immigrants, and I know how difficult it is for adults to be able to lose their, to not have facility with language and have the meaning of the field. I know that he had very basic English vocabulary, poor pronunciation. He was probably asked to repeat what he said, and I think he got frustrated. But I think that if there were more mental health professionals, they would know that this is a person with frustration, and maybe they would have even said reschedule the hearing for when there's an interpreter, because a person can become very upset if their English skills are not up to speed. So, well, he said he was told that he had an anger management problem. Now, I'm no therapist, but in my interaction with him, I did see other people in the classroom that were hardened. He was not one of them. And he was participating in the program of training service dogs. And participation in the program was a prerequisite, was a record, a track record of good behavior. So I feel like, that should be considered. And I just think it's just very sad that he was so misinterpreted because there weren't mental health professionals there who could really assess. So thank you
Very much. Any other questions? Okay, Della Blake, last but not least.
me nervous all day.
What an honor.
Harry Mason's secretary.
Yeah. I too just want to say this is not about Attorney McCarthy. For me, it's about behavioral health representation. I want to tell you a little bit about me and who I am. My name is Della Blake. I am retired 34 years from the Hampden County Sheriff's Department. And I say that with pride and honor because under the last administration, the sheriff and Jay were social workers. They had vision. They saw the opportunity of having individuals within the system and taking advantage of that opportunity to offer substance use treatment and mental health services. In that regard, I had the privilege and honor of working as a case manager counselor at their Western Mass Correctional Alcohol Center. My background too is in criminal justice. My degree is in criminal justice with a psych and social minor. My master's was in education and management. In that opportunity, I was able to promote to end up running the Western Mass Correctional Alcohol Center, hiring certified licensed staff to do mental health treatment and substance use services and developing the program and curriculum that goes along with that. So as far as having a criminal justice background, understanding the importance of taking advantage of the correctional time that we had the clients for anywhere from 3 months, 6 months to a year, planting seeds of change through substance use education, AANA meetings, even efforts to connect our population with recovering people in the community. I'm 1 year retired now, working for the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services in the Department of Public Health, who got the funding and gave the appointment to AdCare Educational Institute. I'm currently the director for the Black Addiction Counseling Education Program. So when you talk about diversity, the need for it being represented on the board, I need to tell you how important that is. There was funding that came down for Black addiction counseling education because there was a study done looking at why Latinos and Blacks were not completing substance use treatment. They weren't completing substance use treatment because the case managers and the counselors doing the substance use treatment and mental health work did not look like that. So there is a significant relevance and importance to people sitting before a parole board and looking at a parole board that needs to be diverse and reflective of the population that they serve. We need to think about the clients. Who here is thinking about the clients? We're not sitting on these boards for our own vainglory. We are sitting on these boards because we have a service that we're trying to provide to a population of people that we say we believe in. You know, I work for the Department of Corrections. We're supposed to be planting seeds to help correct behavior. The purpose of parole reentry support services is to help people successfully transition back into the community. If that is not happening, where are we failing? If we've always done what we always did, we'll get what we always got. So you know what? The definition for insanity is repeating the same as
Doing the same thing
Doing the same
over again and expecting the same results. Evidently, it is time to do something different. So I too am sitting here and I just want to kind of support the need for the vacancy to be filled by a behavioral health representative. For no other reason, and I'm hearing about Attorney McCarthy, it appears to me that from her position where she is advocating getting results. I don't know if it's more important for her to be on the board or to be on the front line, put that position out